Sony officially has 10 years to figure out some competition for the Call of Duty franchise, or it's all over for them. Welcome back to Gears and Tech. As you guys probably already heard, maybe you're hearing it for the first time, Microsoft has won the preliminary injunction against the FTC, which was blocking their ability to complete the Activision Blizzard merger with Microsoft. So before we get to the actual verdict, let's talk about what this case was all about. So as you guys probably already know, Microsoft has made attempts to purchase Activision Blizzard, the company that is behind games like Call of Duty. That's obviously the big banner that everybody's flagging to say, look at this, Microsoft trying to buy Call of Duty. It's not just Call of Duty, it's the entire studio. Now, this has raised some antitrust issues. And antitrust is when you get any one company who has a lopsided control on a market. It can create a situation where the competitors can no longer compete. So Sony obviously was arguing that they can't compete if Microsoft owns Call of Duty. Everybody was happy to leave Call of Duty all by themselves, and then both consoles benefited from the existence of the game. Sony's argument obviously is that if Microsoft owns Call of Duty, there is no reason for them to continue having Call of Duty on the PlayStation, which effectively would mean there's no reason to buy a PlayStation if your favorite game is Call of Duty. You would have to buy an Xbox, and that creates all kinds of market issues. That's a very simplistic, dumbed down version of what's going on. But let's read the ruling from the judge, and then we'll talk about what that actually means. So Judge Corley is the one who was reviewing the case, and she says, this is the summary of what she had to say. Microsoft's acquisition of Activision has been described as the largest in tech history. It deserves scrutiny. That scrutiny has paid off. Microsoft has committed in writing, in public, and in court to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation for 10 years on parity with Xbox. It made an agreement with Nintendo to bring Call of Duty to Switch, and it entered several agreements to, for the first time, bring Activision's content to several cloud gaming services. This court's responsibility in this case is narrow. It is decided if, notwithstanding these current circumstances, the merger should be halted, perhaps even terminated, pending resolution of the FTC administrative action. For the reasons explained, the court finds the FTC has not shown a likelihood it will prevail on its claim. This particular vertical merger in this specific industry may substantially lessen competition. To the contrary, the record evidence points to more consumer access to Call of Duty and other Activision content. The motion for a preliminary injunction is therefore denied. Now, I know that is a lot of legal terms, so I'm going to break this down for you. So to start out with, Microsoft's acquisition of Activision has been described as the largest in tech history. It deserves scrutiny. So that's true. It is a very big deal, and Microsoft is a big company, so they don't just get away with stuff. Consider back in the, I think it was in the late 90s, Microsoft was subject to an antitrust lawsuit where they were packaging Internet Explorer with Windows and forcing users to use Internet Explorer, and it created an antitrust. So browsers like Opera and Firefox and Netscape Navigator, do you guys remember that one? They were all complaining that Microsoft had a stranglehold on the market and therefore they could not compete. So Microsoft has been on the other side of this coin, and they were forced to put in measures to allow these other companies to compete. Now, Microsoft with Bing is really trying hard to get some market back because they've lost a significant amount of it to Google, but that's a whole nother story. So they say the scrutiny has paid off. Microsoft has committed in writing, in public, and in court to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation for 10 years on parity with Xbox. Now, the reason that that is important is initially they set up a meeting. Phil Spencer from Microsoft and Jim Ryan from PlayStation talked on the phone, and they tried to come to terms. Phil Spencer verbally offered Call of Duty for 10 years to Sony. To which Sony said, no, no deal, that's a bad deal. That doesn't even barely get us to the next generation. And when we release PlayStation 6, nobody's gonna buy it because they know that Call of Duty is gonna end after 1 year, and they've got 10 more years of a console with no Call of Duty. So they said that screws them over hard. More on that later. It also made an agreement with Nintendo to bring Call of Duty to Switch. Now, I've talked about this before in a different video, and I'm gonna talk about it now. So at the surface, some of you may remember the Wii or the Wii U back when the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox, I don't know what it's, 360 were out, and you had a special Wii version of Call of Duty. It kind of sucked. It didn't have as many sales as some of the big premium consoles, but it did exist and they did kind of pander to those people. It was a very down-spec'd version of the game, which was really bad. And Nintendo is not known for having flagship consoles. They have very low-spec consoles. So our current version of Call of Duty would likely end up being hindered by having a Switch version, but for them to remain competitive, they would want, the Switch version to be able to play with the other ones. That's where this cross-play has really opened up a lot of avenues for people. So what does that actually look like? I'm going to tell you right now what that will look like is going to be Microsoft Game Pass on the Switch. You can already run Game Pass on your TV. You can run it on your Android device, on your tablet, on your PC, on your Xbox, obviously. So what this will look like is Game Pass on your Switch. It is not going to look like Call of Duty on your Switch. That's not what it's going to look like. And the courts have been duped. I'm telling you, Microsoft specifically was very careful about the words they used when they said, we promised to have Call of Duty on the Switch for 10 years. Yeah, they did, because their long-term plan is to sell everybody membership packages. They don't care about consoles. And that's why they can make an offer to Sony to keep Call of Duty on the Sony PlayStation system, because all they're gonna do is say, oh, by the way, for you to keep Call of Duty, we're actually not going to release it as a PlayStation 5 title. We're going to release it as an Xbox title that can be played on Game Pass on your Sony PlayStation. It's going to be on Game Pass on your Switch and Game Pass on pretty much anything that has some sort of a processor and a Wi-Fi connection. More on that, again, a little bit later. And it entered several agreements for the first time to bring Activision's content to several cloud gaming services. Again, this is Game Pass. This is Game Pass on every single device that can handle cloud gaming. That's it, it's Game Pass. What they are basically doing is they're gonna leverage the court to say, we are bound by law to put Game Pass on the PlayStation, bound by law to put Game Pass on the Switch so you can have Call of Duty. The court said we have to do it, so you have to let us do it. And they're gonna leverage that. It's not gonna be tomorrow. Obviously, it's gonna take a few years for them to get there, but it will happen just like that. You will see. Court's responsibility in this case is narrow. So basically they're saying, we really don't have a lot of jurisdiction here. You've asked us to look into this, and this is us looking into it. Microsoft promised to bring the game for the next 10 years. Like, what more do you want? Like 50 years? Like, who even knows if there's gonna be a Sony PlayStation in 10 years? Who knows? So we can't overstep our bounds. This is a very narrow scope. It sounds legit to us, so we're just gonna let it go. That's what they're saying here. So they're further on defining, it is to decide if, notwithstanding these current circumstances, the merger should be halted, perhaps even terminated, pending resolution of the FTC administrative action. So basically they're saying, we got to figure out, we can halt it, we can cancel it completely, or we can just slow it down. So we're trying to figure out what we should do. So then they go on to say, for the reasons explained, which we've already talked about, the court finds the FTC has not shown a likelihood it will prevail in this claim. That means the FTC will likely lose the claim. They presented all their information and they said, we think we can win. And the court said, we don't think you're gonna win. We're not even gonna allow this to go to trial to figure it out because your argument is weak. And again, the FTC's number one argument was that it would lessen competition, that this would put Microsoft in a power position where they run the show and they would have an unfair advantage over everybody else. That was the FTC's claim. Now the judge says in their next line here, to the contrary, the record evidence points to more consumer access to Call of Duty and other Activision content. So they're saying, well, right now you can't get Call of Duty on the Switch, but if they're allowed to buy Activision, you will be able to get Call of Duty on your Switch. They're guaranteeing that it's going to come to the PlayStation for the next 10 years as well, which technically there's no guarantee because they're a third party. They don't have to release it on the PlayStation. Now, Activision obviously would definitely want to release it on the PlayStation because it's been the #1 selling console of all time for every single generation, and they want to sell units, so they go to the consoles that have the most install base. That's just how it works. So it's unlikely that Sony would miss out on a Call of Duty release, but it's not guaranteed. So now they've promised the courts that they will guarantee Call of Duty on the PlayStation for at least the next 10 years. That's the end of this FTC ruling. Next, what can Sony do about this? So Sony has 10 years to figure this out. They have 10 years to build up a strong IP that people like, that people want to play. And the good news is Call of Duty is at an all-time low for satisfaction, for consumer satisfaction. I play a lot of Call of Duty, but most people that I play with say that it sucks. They hate it. They don't like how glitchy it is. They don't like all the cheats. They don't like all the hacks. They really are not having a fun experience, but there's no great alternative. As bad as it is, there's no great alternative. Now, there are some promising alternatives on the horizon. Some games such as X-Defiant, which is coming out soon, and if they can tweak how their matchmaking works, I think it could be a very worthy competitor. Sony themselves own a number of games already, of IPs already, that they can turn into blockbusters. The Killzone series, they can easily revamp Killzone and make a wonderful COD competition, and then Microsoft will be begging them to get it on their console. So it's not hard. They've got 10 years to do it. Something else that Sony will probably do, and you can mark my words on this, since the clock is running on this 10 years, and we're 2 years into the current generation, technically, we've got 8 years left before we should, well, we've got about 6 years left before we should see PlayStation 6 come out. That'll have a 4-year overlap. I would guess that Sony's going to try and shorten the PlayStation 5 life cycle and release a PlayStation 6. Maybe it'll look like a PlayStation 5 Pro, and then they'll just announce that this is our next gen, or they'll release a PlayStation 6 instead of the PlayStation Pro. They'll kind of rejig their strategy, but if they can get the PlayStation 6 out in 5 years from now, or get the hype out about it, then they'll have a solid 5-year build on having that Call of Duty, so people won't be thinking that far in advance. If they wait, the 6-7 years from now to release the PlayStation 6, then there's only a year or two left of Call of Duty, and then it seems a lot shorter. It makes the decision a little bit easier. So if they can't get a blockbuster IP that everybody loves, that competes with Call of Duty, then they'll have to try to adjust the PlayStation 6 release window. But there's a few things they can do. All is not lost. We will see Game Pass on your PlayStation. We will see Game Pass on your Nintendo Switch. Mark my words, I've predicted the future before, and I've been right before. I'm gonna be right again. You watch. I'm kind of whatever about this. I mean, in 10 years from now, I'm gonna be so old I probably won't be gaming anymore anyway, but who knows, maybe I will. But I'm just kind of watching from the sidelines to see where this plays out. There are still a few hurdles that Microsoft has to go over before this is all complete, but more or less, there's not a lot of roadblocks left anymore for them to continue with this purchase. Hey, thanks for watching all the way to the end of this video. We hope you enjoy the content in this video, and we'd love to have you come back. Consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And for those subscribers who are looking for that extra special thing that you can do to support this channel, consider joining our members group. That's where we're building this community, the Gears and Tech community, where we can all enjoy content together. You'll get special perks, which we'd love for you to check out by clicking the link down below. For those of you who are just happy to watch the video, that's okay too. You can check out some of our other content right over here, where we've got some previous videos that have already been uploaded and enjoyed by many of our viewers already. We do hope to see you again. This has been Gears and Tech. Have a great day.